kills me. I know
All
he's
right.
always like right on the dot, but all good. All good. Here we are. All right. I think I did it correctly. Let's hope. I'm not the most tech savvy person. Sorry, Sam, but we'll do our best. All right. Morning, Sumit. I think we're live.
Good morning, Jules, or is that Sam?
I could be anything today. I guess, yeah. It's going to be a little confusing for people. I had to use his login. So, hi, Shannon. Welcome. Good to see you. We'll get started in about a minute. We started a little late. It's been a bit of a morning. As you can see, if you're just hopping on, I'm not Sam Reeve. My name is Jules. I actually help host the forum if you aren't familiar with me. So Sam's kind of put me in charge of kicking off the broadcast. So he gave me his login. So that should clear up any confusion. He may be able to hop on, but I know he's just living his best life on the islands right now in St. Thomas, I believe. So, I can't fault him. If I was on an island too right now, I'd be on a beach. So we'll see if he's able to hop on, but also he might be having some Wi-Fi issues. It's harder on an island. But yeah, if you're ready, we can kick this off, make it official and get going, because I know you have a really wonderful presentation for us today.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Jules. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see Shannon, and nice to see Lisa in the audience as well. So Lisa is one of my favorite people to hear from when it comes to culture. And Jules, I also see what you've done. So you've, because we're going to be talking about mergers today, you've merged your identity and Sam's for the time being. I see that.
See, we're on theme. We're on brand. So
absolutely.
And Lisa's just put in, oh, hey, Sumit, looking forward to great insights as always. I agree, Lisa. He always comes with his A game, ready to just with all his insights, all his experience. So let's kick things off officially. Again, my name is Jules. I help host the forum each and every week, but I don't do it alone. I have a lot of help from a lovely panel. And it is a little tricky around this time of the year. A lot of us are taking vacation, spending more time with family. So it's so hard to get people together, and especially, as far as our host today, it's me and Sumit right now, but you're going to have a great time. I already saw his presentation. We are going to be discussing building a work culture post-merger, and culture is so important, and the slides that Sumit has are really great. They're also very interactive. I'll give him a proper introduction in a moment for anyone that doesn't know Sumit and isn't as familiar, but he is one of our regular guest speakers on this panel. And normally we do also have Shah, who is an HR expert and professional. She's also a small business owner. She runs Rocky Mountain Health Advocates. So normally she's here, but last week she was in Colorado. No, she was in a cabin. I don't know if she's gone back to Mexico. She's kind of all over the world. And then of course, Sam is normally here. He is the reason why we have the People Strategies Forum, which is a forum where we get together each and every week. We have different guest speakers. We talk on a range of topics, and we like this to be really interactive and fun. We don't want it to be boring. We want to get you engaged, so you're not just sitting staring at us talking at you. So really, please use the chat box to write any comments, feedback, and questions, because questions help us cater this discussion towards anything that you might be experiencing, any challenges you're going through. So we really want to help you in each and every session. And Sam, a little bit about Sam. He is not just the founder of this forum, but he is the founder of Comp Team and the CEO as well. And he is a reward strategist. So he transforms companies through revitalizing rewards programs and compensation programs as well. Now, we're going to get to our main speaker today, Sumit. Now, Sumit is, again, no stranger to the forum. He has been on the panel for a long, long time. He's been a speaker as well, and we're bringing him back because he has a lot of great stuff to talk about the mergers. He's actually going through a merger right now, and a little bit about his background. He is an HR consultant and a people strategist, and he's helped so many companies around the world, and he helps transform companies companies through cutting edge HR practices. He can help with organizational design. He can help with HR transformation, culture building. And so that's really what we're going to dive into today. So be ready, because again, I love his slides. I love how he's arranged everything. Have your laptop or your phone ready, because we are going to be doing a few polls along the way and getting your opinions and thoughts as well. Nothing too crazy. Yeah, you don't have to like be on camera or anything like that. It's just all through, like an anonymous little poll. So it'd be a lot of fun. So thank you so much, Sumit. You get to be our lucky last speaker of 2021. Very exciting. And I will hand you the floor. We can't wait to see what you share.
Thank you. Thanks for the intro, Jules. I'm really excited to be talking about anything to do with culture, and especially in a merger scenario. I think culture is one of the building blocks, and culture can be so critical. So before really kicking off, I'd like to ask a question. So anyone who's on here, if you're tuned into Facebook or LinkedIn or any of the live streams, you can vote on this. So you've got to go to the site that's coming up at the top of the screen and enter the code, and that'll help you in answering this question. So what percentage of mergers succeed in your opinion?
Let's see.
So you need to go to menti.com, use the code to, all right, we've got folks saying 30 to 70%.
All right, do we have one more? Okay. Oh, Lisa put in 20% in the chat.
Chat window, okay.
All right, so it's kind of hovering around that 20 to 70% range, somewhere in between.
So interesting.
Okay. All right. What's the answer? I'm curious. now I'm.
So the answer is actually pretty close to what we've got here. 70 to 90% of all mergers fail in the first 5 years, and I mean that number should be making us sit up and take note. Why do companies merge in the first place? So if they're so bound to be doomed in a short time frame of less than 5 years, why even bother merging at all? Could be a question. Interestingly, most of the failures are because of culture. So obviously, when you're planning a merger, you don't tend to think of is the culture compatible or not? You're thinking of the big dollars coming in, and you're thinking of whether it makes business sense or not. You're thinking of whether it could be apt to destroy a competitor by just taking them over and running them into the ground. But these are harsh statistics, and Lisa absolutely agreed. So the definition of success is important. The expected ROI within 2 years, which could be a very short time frame, in my opinion, depending on the size and scale of the merger. So the data this is for a 5-year time frame, and which makes it even worse, right? So mergers, it seems, are doomed to fail, and I'd like to bring up a couple of mergers in recent history. So one of the more famous mergers in the automobile industry was Daimler Chrysler, and their troubled history can be summed up by the joke that went around, which was when folks were asked, how do you pronounce Daimler Chrysler? So they would say it's pronounced Daimler because the Chrysler is silent. And it was intended to be a merger of equals, but Daimler was a lot more hierarchical, a lot more structured. Chrysler was more spontaneous, more open as an organization, and they just didn't fit into the Daimler world. So eventually, Chrysler was sold off in less than a decade, and the loss resulting from this was, I think, about $28 billion, if I remember correctly. And it was a devastating blow for mergers in the auto industry. The other one was a much happier one, and that was Disney and Pixar. Um, so both into animated films, into 2D and 3D animation, but operating in very different niches. So Disney with a lot of children's titles, Pixar with a lot of those soul-stirring short films, and even animation for adults. And if you look at their catalog now, you'll see the clear differences in how they operate, how their audience segments are different, but there's no conflict really between the two organizations. And it's one of the more seamless mergers to happen um, in recent times. So um, when things go wrong, they can go as horribly wrong as the ones on the left. When things work well in a merger scenario, they can be pretty interesting. So let's put ourselves into the shoes of an employee and think about if you were an employee and your company were to undergo a merger, um, what would be the most important aspect for you?
Another I told you this was going to be really interactive and fun. So definitely want to hear your opinions out there. So if you don't see the website,
what would be the topmost question in your mind if there was a merger scenario? Interesting.
Good ones.
Communication, culture, salary, job security. Interesting. And like Jules mentioned, I'm handling a merger scenario right now. And these are important questions that are coming up from the employee side. I think communication definitely nails it. Without communication, no matter what else is happening, it's bound to fail. Leadership positivity, absolutely, Lisa. So in the chat window, that's what Lisa's put in. The leadership has to rally around the change. They have to be positive, and you can't really have leaders having toxic water cooler conversations about doom and gloom all around, or spreading uncertainty, even though there might be a lot of it. But people would look to the leaders for the right kind of answers. And so leaders have to ensure they engage in two-way communication. There needs to be the right kind of focus on culture, which needs to dwell on a little on the past as well as on the future. So we come from a great culture. We've got a heritage or a history of doing A, B, C things, and we need to take it forward into the new organization. Of course, salary and job security are big concerns as well, where will I have a job tomorrow? Are you planning some kind of restructuring? Will you fire me? Will you demote me to a different role? Will I report to somebody else? Are you going to relocate me? So questions around one's own job. And of course, will my salary reduce? So those are all very pertinent questions, which would be among some of the queries that come to mind. But since we're talking about culture, why is culture so important? So enough and more research has shown that culture has a tangible element to it. It's not a story of the six blind men and the elephant, where everyone's wondering what the elephant really looks like. So culture is very measurable, and I'm sure Lisa would definitely agree with me for one. So on one hand, we might feel mindsets are not measurable. We might feel values are very intangible. behaviors cannot really be. Um, so I've got another participant somewhere here in the room who's
We've got a
trying to
moment
find his
today
voice.
going on with Sumit and his cat. So I think your cat wants to be part of the convo.
Yeah, so we've had quite a few mergers in this house with two cats and a dog.
There you
So
go.
a lot of culture shift. So there's
The
two
Disney.
cats, there's a dog, there's a toddler, and two adults.
Oh,
So a lot of cultural diversity.
there you
But like I was saying, you can surely measure all these cultural aspects. You can translate them into monetary value as well, as a lot of recent surveys have shown um, that people are happier taking a compensation cut if they get to work in the right culture. So before proceeding further, I've got one more poll question, which is, what exactly does culture mean to you? So when you hear culture or when you hear about the culture of your own organization, what does it mean to you?
while we're waiting for all the answers to come in, Lisa just put in the chat here. Culture's definable and measurable. The issue that she sees with mergers most often is that there's no cultural due diligence to define the differences and expectations on both sides, i.e. be proactive. Deal makers are all about the financial terms of the deal and rarely will advocate for this, unfortunately. So.
Absolutely, because I think that's a great point. Um, and like I was mentioning earlier as well, that people tend to think more about what is the financial value of this deal. They completely forget that culture is tangible as well, and of course, it's tougher to measure the value of a certain culture or of the loss you would incur in case you don't fix any of the cultural issues. So that's why at the due diligence stage, you tend to study financial processes, HR processes, but you don't really connect all of them to culture, and which can lead to disaster much later. Um, so yeah, what does culture mean to you? It could mean camaraderie, it could mean connectedness, and I see it tying in with the earlier themes of communication as well. So is there enough open communication? Is there enough trust building in the organization? It doesn't really matter whether you're an innovative organization, whether you're focusing on, let's say, um, operational excellence, but what matters is what is the kind of culture that you're trying to build, and how exactly are you trying to convey to your people. And uh, like Lisa saying in the chat as well, leaders don't see culture. They think it's a fuzzy, mysterious thing. We've got this culture rather than a business strategy. But people and their commitment are the heart of your growth and brand. And absolutely agree, Lisa. And I think the intangibility of culture is also because of a lack of communication. So we just kind of assume that this is the way it's always been around here. So without really being able to explain why. And there's so I don't really know how scientific the study was, but there's an example of scientists who put some monkeys in a cage, and the cage was open from the top. So obviously the monkeys would try and climb out and escape. So every time a monkey did that, they sprayed the monkey with cold water. And of course, the poor monkey would back down. Um, and then gradually, what they started doing was whenever any monkey would start climbing up, they would spray the other monkeys, the ones who were not climbing, with cold water. And eventually, they found that those monkeys would pull down any monkey who tried to climb out of the cage. And gradually, they started replacing the monkeys in the cage one by one, to an extent that none of the new monkeys were ever sprayed with cold water. But whenever they'd see any monkey trying to climb out, they would pull the monkey down. So they had no understanding of the why aspect of it, but and we've got our guest participant back. Um, for some reason, he's very curious today. Usually, he just takes one round and goes away. Today, he's hovering around.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that's an actual scientific experiment or not, but I remember hearing about it long ago. And the idea was that that's how culture manifests itself. So it's measurable, but a lot of times we have no idea why we're subscribing to a particular cultural element. And if only we could start focusing on more measurement, we could start focusing on uh, the rationale to why we're doing certain things, it would make culture a lot more of a living body and a lot more of a measurable entity. And that's what I was referring to earlier as well. So a survey of job candidates, and I think about 7,000 people were surveyed for this. They felt that they would happily take a job cut if they could work for a company which has a better culture. Um, and there are different bodies of research here. One of them says that one of them actually quantifies it and says that the amount of annual salary decrease that people are willing to take to work for the right culture is about $28,000, and this is in the US alone. So, and this was for people who were looking at roles that pay about 150 a year. So that's a significant chunk. So essentially people are willing to take 20-25% less money in case they get to work for the right culture.
Wow.
And that's a lot.
That is a lot. So just
and imagine, so if we turn it the other way around, imagine the incentive for an organization to create the right kind of culture. So you could, instead of say paying at the 75th percentile, you could end up paying at the 60th and save yourself a lot of money just by creating a right culture. And the reason we're talking about this here is because a merger is a great opportunity to create that kind of culture. And there are different models that I'll come to, where two companies, A and B. So one, of course, A says it's our culture, and we will completely absorb company B into it. So you destroy or you completely eliminate the unique culture of B and incorporate it inside A. Usually happens when the sizes of the two companies are very different. So happens less often in a merger of equals, happens when, say you're a $50 billion company, you're taking over a small 100 million company, which has, say, 20 people, 25 people. So it may not make sense for unique subcultures. You might be better off just absorbing their culture completely. The second one, of course, is where you get to maintain separate cultures. So you operate with two different cultures. So it's a merger, but depending on your products and services, you could still have completely different cultures. And for example, in the Daimler Chrysler example, if they maintained that, it might have helped. If let's say there's a hotel chain which has say one set of absolutely premium high customer service kind of hotels, and the other one is more of a budget chain that they take over, maybe they'd want to operate with completely different cultures, because it may not make sense to merge those two together. But at the same time, if you look at the third one, where two companies come together and they forge a completely new culture, that is also a possibility. And in my hotel chain example, you can have, say, a hotel with a chain with great culture saying, we would like to retain our customer friendliness, but at the same time, maybe we can learn operational excellence or sticking to some principles of financial prudence from the budget chain. And The last one, of course, is where you operate with subcultures, and company B gets to retain its own unique culture. So while it's operationally, it's a subset of A, but culturally, it could still retain its own distinct culture. And this could be an example like, say, Amazon and Zappos, where Zappos, for a long time, they operated with their own culture where they didn't have as much of a hierarchy. They were a lot more customer friendly. And they even used to give bonuses to people for leaving. So at the end of the first 1 month, you could quit your job and you could take away a bonus, because their philosophy was, if you don't want to be here, we think it'll just be a waste of our money to keep you. So you might as well leave, and we're happy to pay you to leave. And that was what they were doing. I'm also going through Lisa's comment in the chat window, where
how to decide what your culture strategy is. Do you evolve both the cultures in the similar way? Do you stay separate? Do you have best of both? So she's saying in all cases, you need to clarify decision rights, and that this is the most common form of tension for people. So who's on first? So I can understand it, like you're bringing two maybe very different organizations together. So yeah, how do you like navigate that? Like what if, like, you know, they disagree on like one point, like one company really wants to retain something and the other wants to abolish it completely? How have you like experienced something like that before, Sumit, in a merger? And if so, like how do you overcome that? How do you find a happy medium for both of the companies?
So quite honestly, I think it would be great for people to even start having that conversation as step one, and saying that, hey, we've got these two different cultures, how do we bring them together? Usually what I've seen is more of cultural assimilation, where one company says, these are our 5 pillars of culture. We want everyone in the organization to adopt them. And from day one itself, they start off by saying, hey, sign our code of conduct. You can't do this. If you do that, we could fire you. We could issue a warning letter. And that's not a very pleasant experience for uh, all the people who've been taken over. So different approaches here. And of course, it depends a lot on the context. For example, there's an Indian conglomerate which is known for its acquisitions. So not really mergers, more of acquisitions, and they've got diverse businesses. So they own a movie studio, they own a supermarket chain, they've got a tire manufacturing company. They also have tea and coffee estates as part of their portfolio. So they maintain very distinct cultures, and they've never really tried to amalgamate and say that this is the one single unique culture that we stand for. So they have identified some core values and behaviors that they value, but they've never really tried to merge the cultures of their tires business with say the movie business.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a smart strategy in their case. So normally I'd say forging a new culture is a good approach, but of course it's very, very context dependent. Like if you're say talking about a merger which didn't really happen. So back in 2018, Kraft Heinz was trying to take over Unilever. And I think Unilever is one of the most progressive companies in the world when it comes to things like inclusion and diversity, when it comes to sustainability. So they've been talking about a living wage. They've been talking about the fact that they want to educate their vendors on inclusion and diversity, and make everyone in their supply chain carbon neutral. And in fact, they've been talking about so they've advocated a new principle called net positive, which says that advocating zero carbon is stupid, or advocating minimum harm is stupid. You should be talking about creating positivity rather than reducing negativity, or reducing harm. And Kraft Heinz they weren't really happy with, because Kraft Heinz is like a um, it's like a juggernaut. It just crushes everything in its way and takes over. So they felt that the Unilever culture would be destroyed. So they voted against the move to acquire them, even though Kraft Heinz was offering massive amounts of money. And since then, in the last 3 years, they've Unilever started doing even better. Um, so that's the power of how. I mean, it's technically it's not really cultural due diligence, but it is, in a sense, it is the recognition that those two cultures will not be able to collaborate, and it'll basically destroy the organization from within if there's that kind of a cultural conflict. So, what do we do in order to um, change culture, or in order to make a merger successful? Because, like Lisa mentioned as well, we don't have the luxury of saying no to a merger because the cultures are incompatible. So typically, uh, some board room discussions will result in a merger being announced, and then it'll fall upon various leaders and the HR function to figure out how exactly do we now build a culture, or how do we bring two cultures together. So step one, um, what are the current cultural elements? So what's the current culture like, and what is your envisaged future state? So if you're, say, a company like Apple, and you're merging with say a company that's based in China and that makes inexpensive handsets for the mass market, and you're okay with, say, um, you're not really obsessive about quality, you're fine with say a 90% accuracy rate, and you're fine with giving people refunds or replacing their phones in case they explode or something.
Mhm.
So I'm not being um, uncomplimentary to companies in that part of the world, of course, but uh, there are cultural differences, and there are stark differences in the way some organizations do operate. So what is your current culture? Do you focus on innovation? Do you focus on low cost production? um, would you like to, in the future, would you like to maybe um, cut down on a little bit of innovation, and focus more on reducing operating cost? Or are you fine with exploring 100 ideas, out of which you reject 95, um, but the 5 that you do adopt are absolute winners? So how do you keep that innovation engine going, could be one of your questions. How do you still be prudent about your cost? How do you ensure that people look up to you as an employer of choice, and so on? So what are your current and future cultural elements? um, how can you appeal to the minds of people, and help them make rational decisions about what they want to see in your culture? How do you build an emotional connect? How do you connect them to your culture? How do you uh, talk to their heart? And Shah is not here today, but her HR with a heart model really works well here. And lastly, how do you make this self-sustaining? How do you inculcate those habits where the culture gets adopted? So it's not only as long as somebody's walking you through a set of slides, or somebody's making you do an activity. It's more like you start thinking in a particular way, you start doing something that starts becoming a habit. So that's how one can change. So when we talk about the current culture and the envisaged future state, one example here is that of McDonald's. So McDonald's is one of course, the largest fast food chains in the world. They um, do get a lot of criticism for their contribution to obesity all around, but they're also a very, very innovative organization. in the sense that they research about 5 years prior to entering a new geography. They think about who all they'll need to acquire, what kind of tie-ups they'll need to have with, say, local farmers and local producers, and how they'll set up their supply chain to deliver a consistent experience all across. Um, and culturally, how would they operate with all the partners or all the companies that they're taking over in order to get there. So uh, they've actually won a few awards for innovation as well, because they tend to localize their products wherever they go. So in India, they would have a different set of products than they would in Singapore or Australia or maybe the US. Um, so very, very different culture. Um, we already spoke about the hotel chain example where, say, you're the Ritz Carlton, and for some reason you're merging with a company which is into large scale budget hotels for, say, business travelers. And how do you bring the two cultures together? Do you really want everyone to operate like the Ritz Carlton and offer a world class experience? Do you want to adopt certain elements of the mass market from your low cost chain, or do you want to operate in two different ways altogether? So how do you foresee your culture? What is it that you want to build in both of these organizations? The second one, of course, is appealing to the mind. So creating a shared vision. What does success look like? So the aspect Lisa was mentioning earlier as well, leadership positivity. So how do leaders convince you about the road ahead? How do they get you excited? And how do they define the success measures? So it's one thing to sell a dream about this is what the future will look like, but do we actually have a road which takes us there? Are we able to define certain milestones which will um, help us in getting there? Um, and lastly, are we having enough dialogue? Do we have enough genuine, heartfelt conversations which help us in understanding what people are saying, what their concerns are, and in addressing them? So, are we able to influence them to take a logical decision to make this merger a success and to participate in a workplace that's focused on results and outcomes? That's how we'd appeal to the mind. How do you talk to the heart? So step one, sign a covenant. And like I was mentioning to Jules, the great thing is in the modern world, we don't have to sign it in blood anymore. It's more of committing to a set of shared values. It's um, a joint way of doing things. So what are some of the pillars that we can agree on, which will create a foundation for us to succeed? And creating a set of rituals. So once again, there's no um, creating, drawing a pentagon and lighting fires inside. And I think the ritual that we were talking about, very relevant from a cultural standpoint, Jules. So because you're from that part of the world, I'd like to invite you to talk about it much better than
Oh, so
anyone else.
we're not around a bonfire and we're not doing a haka on a field. And I mean, maybe that we could start something, maybe things, it's not bad. And I love a bit of haka. Maybe we could incorporate that into the corporate world, make things more interesting. But, but I think you're talking about something else, right?
Well, since you mentioned the haka, of course, it could be a ritual like that as well. So when we're talking about getting people excited about culture, the haka, which is what the New Zealand rugby team do before they go out onto the field. So of course, it's great to watch as a spectator, even though, I mean, I don't watch rugby, but I could just watch the haka.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the haka lures
even
me in. It's so like, I mean, you can't see a haka and not be like so mesmerized by it, like their passion. I love their passion behind it too. It's like, so you know, if you're putting passion into your rituals and your rituals become your habits, and then habits, I guess, eventually turn into a culture, right? Because everyone's kind of in alignment with one another and in alignment with the values of a company.
absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head, Jules, by talking about passion. So the whole point of talking to the heart is to build that emotional connect, to talk about what are the rituals that we follow, what is it that we stand for, and what gets us absolutely passionate about creating the right kind of culture and passing on the right values and role modeling them as well. And important factor here would also be to celebrate success, and that's what those two little champagne flutes indicate. Uh, so a team that wins together stays together, of course, and um, it's important to not only be prescriptive in a culture scenario and say, oh, we've got to do this, we've got to do that, these are our shared values, this is the behavior you're expected to display. I think now you're part of a bigger firm, so you're a brand ambassador and so on. It's crucial to also celebrate success, to talk about what we're doing well, what we've accomplished, and create those milestones where we look back and say, oh, wow, we've come a long way and we've done a fair bit. Um, and then moving on to the last part of it, how do we create the right set of habits? So, how do we give people the right kind of tools and technology that they can access and make a habit out of it? How do we use things like habit forming challenges? So, research says that you do something for 21 days at a stretch and it becomes a habit. So, if I want people to, um, let's say, engage in safer behavior, what kind of challenge can I give them? If I want people to be more creative, can I issue a 25-day challenge where everyone's got to think of a new idea every morning and discuss it with their teams and so on and so forth? So how do you get people to create and build those right kind of habits? And one of the ways to do it also is to assign commitment buddies. So there are people who can take a shared pledge, and it could be something as simple as creating a culture where we help each other in striking a balance, uh, which is if, say, Jules is my leader, maybe I could hold her accountable by saying, Jules, I'll hold you accountable no more than one email after 8 p.m. in a month. If it's absolutely crucial, we'll allow you that. But any more than that, I'm going to encourage people to start ignoring your emails.
Yeah,
So that's how commitment buddies would function and would help in creating the right kind of behaviors where uh, people then start believing that the right values or the right behaviors are not only what you see on a slide or on a bulletin board. They're actually being practiced by the people who matter. So it sets a completely different tone altogether. And that's how we'd pretty much work towards building the right kind of culture. And I'd like to end the talk with this quote from Simon Sinek. So, no matter what the business rationale for your merger is, no matter how many billions of dollars you expect to earn, but you will not be able to earn the respect of your customers unless you earn that of your employees first. And that's why I absolutely love this quote. It's from Simon Sinek's book called Start With Why. So, unless your employees love your company first, your customers never will. And that's where the workforce experience you're building, the culture that you're creating, um, that's that's where it would matter.
that's so true. You see it anywhere you go. Like you can 100% see it on an employee's face or like over the phone, even. You can feel when someone loves where they're at. And if they the opposite can't stand where they're at. Like you can feel it, you can see it, and it makes such a difference. Like the passion, the energy behind anything, the experience they create for their customers, just because they love where they are, who they're working with, who their leaders are. Like it's so obvious. It makes such an enormous difference. Like I notice it everywhere I go, because I'm so like coming from a customer service background, I always look for like, you know, top-notch quality customer service, whether it's in person or over the phone. And you can just like, it's like night and day. It's so crazy when you start to really observe it and go, oh wow, like they really love where they work, and then it just makes you happy. I don't know, like it's just like energy, right? We're all energy. So I love those tips.
Oh, absolutely, you're right, Jules. And in fact, I started my career with customer service as well. And one of the first things we were taught was that even though your customers can't see you, they can hear whether you're happy, upset, excited, afraid, distracted. And people can hear the smile in your face if you're happy. So the idea always was to help people to create that culture where the entire team could be happy and excited about serving customers, and um, the feedback scores did reflect a lot of that. So that's a great point. Thank you.
Of course. All right. So okay, so that was your last slide. I love that end quote. And we are almost near the end of this session. So if anyone has any last minute questions for Sumit, please put them in the chat. Therese, I noticed you raised your hand, but I'm not sure if that was by accident or if you do have a question. So if you want to write it into the chat before we start to wrap up. But this was great, Sumit. Like, and the merger you're doing right now, what kind of, are you experiencing any challenges with this merger? And if so, do you want to share any of those things?
Absolutely, it's an interesting one, and it's a major clash of cultures because it's a large conglomerate which is taking over an entity that belongs to the government. So both the organizations, they've got a lot of rich history, and they pride themselves on having done a lot of innovative things and having been a part of Indian history. So they're both Indian organizations, but the cultures are poles apart. And right now, one of the things that we're trying to do is create a communication plan for, say, the first 30 days to give people the comfort about the fact that their jobs are safe, and they're entering a new world of opportunity and excitement, and they'll be taken care of. So getting the tone right, making sure that we appeal to the mind and talk to the heart, those aspects, we do them well, is definitely step one. And of course, starting to think about beyond the first 60 or 90 days, when the habit formation part of it will kick in. So trying to hold steady to these design principles and to figure out how do we want the culture of the new entity to evolve, and how strongly assimilated will they be in um, the organization that's taking over their culture. So pretty interesting project, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's nice that you're at least involving the employees throughout the whole process. And it's interesting because in the beginning, those were some of the points we touched on. The communication was important in the poll that we did, the job security portion. So those two things where you were saying, like, you're telling everyone, no, your jobs are safe, you're fine, everything's going to be fine. And then the communication part, like, how can we help you? How can we instill these have this merger and then start to instill new habits whilst also keeping your job safe. So I love that we kind of like wrapped it in a nice little bow there.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Jules.
Beautiful. If anyone has any other last minute questions, feel free to put them in the chat there. I just want to say thank you so much, Sumit. This was such a detailed and thorough presentation. I love the slides. I hope everyone else did as well. It seemed, yes, we've got a lot of thanks very much. And then while we start to wrap up here, we just want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor. Sam always does a better job of this than me, but I'll do my best. So we have, our sponsor is TMA, and actually Sumit is, you have your TMA certification as well, I believe.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a brilliant tool, and of course, it's very insightful always to be using it. And I mean, I'd encourage everyone to write to us and ask for a demo and seek some support in terms of taking the assessment for yourselves. And we could also talk about how to further deploy it. I think it's extremely impactful, and in a culture kind of a scenario, it could really help in trying to figure out a lot more about your people and how you can create meaningful messaging for them.
Absolutely, love it. And are you incorporating this into the current merger that you're doing? Are you using a lot of like the applicable tools on this?
Unfortunately, no, because I'm involved with a different organization there, so they're using some of their in-house tools too.
Oh, that's right. You're part of a big team, because it sounds like a very big, exciting merger. So I guess, yeah, you can't be a one-man show for this one.
Oh, it's a pretty large team, yeah. So we've got about 20 odd people.
Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot of work ahead. Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right. And did Sam give you the slide for next week's speaker? Do we have that available, or are we going to be surprised next week? See, everyone, we're just going with the flow. We're being as agile as possible. You know, Sam, our lovely leader, has just thrown us into the deep end, and we're trying to swim here. We don't have that slide for next week? Nope. Okay, no worries. Well, again, thank you so much, Sumit. I am sure everyone got so much out of this, so much value. Thank you so much for going through each step and breaking everything down. And I hope everyone enjoyed it. And thank you so much for joining us on our very last People Strategies Forum for the year. We will be back next week with another guest speaker. I guess it's a surprise for us all. So come back same time next week, and have a happy and safe new year. And we will see you in 2022.
Wish you a fantastic new year, everyone, and see you next year.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for hosting us tonight, Jules.
I did my best, you know. Well, I'm not as tech savvy, but you know, we dive in and we do the things, right? We do our best.
We learn as we go along.
Exactly. Well, thank you again, everyone. And thanks again, Sumit.
Thanks, Jules. See you next year as well.
Oh, next year? Yes. All right. Bye.
All right. Bye.